Right, so as Georgina said, I'm going to be talking a bit about portfolios. They are not just for designers. Um, I think that everyone will benefit from having them. So what I'll be talking about today as a brief overview, is an intro about who I am, what I'm going to be covering, some basics about what a portfolio is good for, how to write about your work, particularly as a developer, and then next steps for going on to develop your portfolio. So who am I? Just a quick acknowledgement first for International Women's Day. So it started as part of a labor movement for fighting for better working conditions. And we are all very privileged to be here, to be able to attend this, to be able to work as we do, but there's still a lot left to do on a structural level for an equitable working environment for everyone. So hopefully this can become just one tool in your toolbox for helping to achieve your goals while we continue to fight for a fairer world, fairer working environment. As for me, my name's Shaina, my pronouns are she, her. I took the long way around to end up in tech. So I majored in illustration, and somehow here I am today as a UX designer and front-end developer. I really, really like CSS. I know it's controversial. I like Angular. I can get into a bit of trouble sometimes, but I like it nonetheless. And I am a staunch UX defender. I also love cats. Partner's allergic. It's very tragic. So I'm a UI lead and developer at Aiimi as part of the Aiimi Labs team. We work on a product, internal product that is used for making insights about data. I semi-frequently update my own portfolio, and I also do look at CVs and portfolios as they come through as we continue to hire to the Aiimi Labs team. So by the end of this session, I hope everyone is excited about having a portfolio and that you are equipped to know how to move forward with creating one for yourself. So why should you have one? Well, there's a few different reasons. It's a good work showcase. So this little excerpt of a website on the right, I'm just gonna kind of mock myself a little bit because this is from my website. This is from my portfolio. These little circly dots, they mean nothing, really. They are a metric of your own making, really. You need to back it up with something. So by showcasing your work, that is the evidence that you have maybe those 5 filled in circles of HTML knowledge. It's also an opportunity to provide context to the different processes and decisions that have gone on during creating a work. So why did you do something a certain way, for example? It's also a good way to show off your personality. So there's so many different styles. You know, you can use the colors, the fonts, the layouts. Your way of writing helps reflect who you are. Whereas sometimes if you get a CV through, it's just this Times New Roman or Calibri bullet point list. So this is an opportunity to express yourself. You're more than just a set of skills, you're also a person with a personality. You also want to keep your audience engaged. So the longer they spend with you, the more they're going to get to know you, the more attached they'll feel to you, the more they'll want to maybe hire you, call you up, maybe become your client, depending on what your portfolio is used for, whether you're trying to get a full-time role or try to grow your client base. So this is a good opportunity to also link to things like your blog or to GitHub or Stack Overflow or wherever else you have a relevant online footprint. I would not recommend your Instagram, amazing though your photos may be. Also really important to make contacting you easy. Another good thing that you get out of creating a portfolio is that it allows you an opportunity to practice talking about your work. So whether you are going to be going into an interview to get a new job or whether you are looking for new clients, you need to be able to talk about your work in a way that anyone can understand, technical or otherwise. And it's good to practice it in a nice controlled environment of writing it down before you have to do it in person. It'll make it a lot easier. So how exactly do you write about your work? So I've created a little example project for us to pretend to write about for this. So a little bit of help from the Black Lives Matter movement for that. So let's say we have a project and we're going to build a Black Lives Matter map. Every time someone mentions Black Lives Matter or BLM on Twitter, we add 1 to our total tweet count, and we add a marker on our cool map, and we add the tweet to our list on the right. So this is a bit of a technical thing that we need to write about, and we need to explain various parts of it in a nice, good way so anybody can understand and kind of understand our way of thinking and the decisions that we've made. So the first thing I would write about is talk about what you're solving. So who is this for and what problem does this group face? So for this project, we could say something like, my web app targets users with racist uncles who keep saying that Black Lives Matter is still a fringe movement of extremists. This app gives them a quick link to share with their uncles to prove them wrong. So that's something you might want to write down. Now, a really common way that you can think about these things is using this user story template that's really common for UX teams, which is as a something, I want something so that something else. I don't think you necessarily need to write it in this way in your portfolio, but I do think there's benefit in writing it in that format so you can make sure you truly understand the problem. Who's having it? What do they want? And what is the desired outcome at the end? It's also important when you're talking about the work that you've done to talk about the project structure and technologies. So you might want to talk about how you utilize the Twitter API, for example. Did you just look for the words BLM and Black Lives Matter? Did you create a dictionary of synonyms? How exactly did you do it? And then how did you plot that on a map? What sort of, project structure did you have? Did you use Google Maps or did you use Leaflet? Something else? Why? What was the reason behind all of the decisions you made? And then what were some unexpected challenges and how did you overcome them? So for example, there could be thousands upon thousands of these tweets coming in. How did you handle such a large number and keeping the page up to date and mapping them on the page? So maybe you decided to only show the ones for the last 5 minutes, for example. And some of this will be dictated in the real world by project constraints and acceptance criteria, but this is a fictional project and you have control over it. And then finally, if it's relevant, how did you work with a team and divide the work? What did you work on? One thing that I see a lot or hear a lot when I'm talking to people in interviews is that they'll talk about projects they've worked on, but they have a really hard time saying what exactly they did. What did they own on that project? So, if you were the person who was responsible for studying the Twitter API and figuring out how you would utilize it, say that, call it out, tell us what your particular area of focus was, and then how you linked the information and the things that you worked on to other people. Really important. So another really important part of a portfolio is images. Now, sometimes you can add really nice screenshots. So maybe you do have something like this, where it's kind of nice to look at and you can figure it out. But maybe you were working on something more like code improvements. Maybe not quite as sexy for some people, but I still think there's a good value in having images. So you can do something visual, like you can show the data flow, or you could show the project structure. Just showing things to keep people more engaged, draw their eye to the page. Old UX trick. Pictures are pretty, people like to look at them. And yeah, keep them engaged. Break up your walls of text with something new to look at, especially when it adds value. So this data flow, for example, which probably could be better, but it does show how the data would move from the Twitter API to some sort of Black Lives Matter filter that you would write. And then you'd move those matching tweets into a date filter if you were doing it to the last 5 minutes, for example, and then you'd push it into something like Leaflet. So next steps. So you have the ability now to write about your work. What do you do? What do you do now? Well, to get started, figure out what exactly needs to go into your portfolio. So any past projects that you've done. So if you are a student, it could be things in school that you've worked on. Again, the important part is really showing your thought process. You're not just a cog in the machine, like putting in numbers, typing up code. You're making decisions while you're doing that. And those are the kinds of things that recruiters and the people who will be sitting in on your interview want to hear. They want to hear your decision-making skills, not just that like you have all the syntax for Java memorized or something. So thoughtfully write up about things. If you don't have anything yet, use your portfolio as your project. This is particularly useful if you are a web developer, because you are going to be making decisions not just about how you've coded it up, but also about what sort of structure the whole thing has taken. So this is actually something that I've done in my own portfolio. I do write about my portfolio making process and why I did the things I did and what tools did I use. So I used an animation library because it was something I wanted to get better at. That's another really cool thing you can add, is talking about how you chose to use something that you've never used before because you wanted to learn. That's a really good sign. If I'm looking to add someone to our team, I want someone who's going to be taking the initiative and learning new things. And of course, who can really talk well about the work that they're doing. Work environments tend to be very collaborative, even during COVID. We're often on Zoom calls, we're often slacking each other. We need to be able to talk to each other about the decisions we're making, the tools we want to use, things like that. It's also good to include some external links. So maybe you have a GitHub that has some of your projects. Maybe it'll show that you've contributed to some open source projects. Maybe you're really active on Stack Overflow and you want to show how you are good at answering questions and helping people. Maybe you have a blog. Maybe you use CodePen or one of those other online coding editors a lot, and you have lots of cool little example projects. And then finally, of course, contact links. You want to make this as seamless as possible, and this is regardless of whether you are someone who is looking to be hired full-time or you want someone to hire you for a particular job. You want to be easy to contact in multiple ways. So that can be via email, that can be on the phone. Give people as many options as possible. Some people, like me, a classic millennial, I don't like making phone calls. So give me your email any time of the day over a phone number. Make it as easy for people as possible. After that, it's up to you to build it, really. If you're a web developer, I strongly, strongly recommend building it from scratch rather than using like WordPress or Squarespace or one of those things, because this is your work. This is your chance to show what you can do. Or if you just want to learn about it. I mean, I love web development. I think everyone should learn how to do it. So yeah, build it from scratch if you want. If not, there are a lot of other tools out there. Squarespace is one. Maybe you watch a lot of YouTube videos like me and you realize that they fund like half of YouTube creators. Squarespace is one. WordPress can be a little controversial, but is really easy to use. There's other ones like Drupal and a bunch of other content management systems that make it easier for you to use if you're not a web developer and are not keen on learning those skills. Just quickly going back to if you're a web developer, the only exception to building something for like in WordPress or Drupal, for example, is if that is the kind of developer you are. If you are a WordPress developer, please make your site in WordPress and show what you can do with the theming. That is relevant. So try to make the tools you use as relevant to what you do when you're building it. And then also share it. Share it not only so that it gets visibility from your intended audience, whether that's somebody to hire you or whether that's for a full-time role. Share it also to get feedback. Have people bug test for you. Have people give you feedback on your writing. Is it clear? Particularly if these are not technical people. Have them read through what you wrote. a lot of the time, the people giving your CV or your portfolio the first look are not technical. They're not going to know, you know, all about this super fancy machine learning algorithm that you've written. You want to make sure that it is understandable by your average person to some degree. And then finally, iterate. Most important step. It's very rare, if ever, that somebody gets something totally right on the first try. It's important to build something, check in with how it's doing, and then try again. Iterate on it, make changes to it, learn from it. So again, you can do that by getting feedback from friends if you want. You can do that. I mean, you can hire people to find specific journeys on your portfolio and make sure that it makes sense. You could use Google Analytics to see if people are going to the first page of your portfolio and then never clicking on anything else. These are all tools that you can use to figure out how can you make this better. Another thing is, if you've been sending this portfolio out and you're not getting a lot of calls, figure out why. There's no final product for a portfolio, and you should also constantly be updating it. New projects, new blog articles, whatever is relevant to you, keep it fresh. That way also, if someone comes back to it, they can see that you're engaged. You're like, this is what you're serious about. That's all from me. I'm going to hand over to Shar, who is going to talk a little bit more about recruitment and how you can get your foot in the door. Thank you.